Today, the Federal Reserve just finished its rate announcement. We're going to discuss in simple terms what this means, why it is important, and how it affects everything from mortgages to car loans. We'll break down what the Fed decided, why it matters for your borrowing costs, and what someone eyeing a mortgage right now should know. So stick around, we'll talk about it in plain English you can use. How you doing? I'm Joe Harris with Morgan Financial. I'm here with Nate Santa also from Morgan Financial. How you doing, Nate?
Doing pretty good. Happy to be back on the pod.
All right, cool. Yeah, we're talking about the Fed had their meeting today, and it's always a big event. You know, there's a lot of build up to it and a lot of discussion after it, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, there's all eyes on the language like we talked about this morning, and it's something that every time it comes up, you know, we're crossing our fingers hoping for rate cuts, but this time it didn't look like it was going to happen, so
right.
Kind of new.
So, we're going to discuss, what that means for everybody and why it's important to them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I got some questions here.
Cool.
First one, a lot of people ask, what is the federal funds rate, and why does it matter when the Fed kind of changes it?
Okay, so the Fed, it refers to the Federal Reserve, and what they do is they try to control. One of the things that they do is they try to make sure inflation is within a certain target. They usually target 2% for inflation. So if inflation is high, if they feel like inflation is high, which it was the last couple of years, it's come down considerably. But if they feel like it's too high, what they do is they raise their rate, which is the federal funds rate, and that's the rate at which banks borrow money. Now, banks borrow money from the Fed, and they'll turn around and lend it back out to you or for car loans, home equity lines of credit, credit cards, and things like that.
Gotcha. So what did the Fed do today?
So today they decided to keep their benchmark rate the same. They didn't raise it and they didn't drop it. And I know a lot of people were hoping for a rate drop because borrowing costs are high, the economy's doing well, and they figured it's time for a cut.
Yeah. So why would they keep it the same if we hear inflation is on its way down and there's some sort of growth in the market that we're seeing as well?
Well, they look at the labor market. The labor market's strong. The unemployment's around 4.2%. They look at the growth. We just had a 3% growth in GDP or gross domestic product, which is basically all the things that we sell. In this country, it's like the top line revenue for the country. But it's easy to have a 3% growth when you had a drop last, so you kind of got to put that in perspective. We're not seeing like an overgrowth or, super high growth. It's just in perspective to last meeting, it was a little bit lower. And then the economy seems to be doing pretty well. Inflation has cooled considerably where it was the last, couple years. It's cooled, a lot down. We're closer to that 2% target than we have been in the last 4 or 5 years.
Gotcha. So what kind of data is the Fed looking at? What kind of data should normal people be looking at? What kind of data should lenders be looking at?
Okay.
Real estate agents.
So we look at, things like core price, CPE. CPI, thank you. PCE, I'm getting mixed up.
Yeah.
PPI, Producer Price Index, CPI, Consumer Price Index, and core price. That we look at the inflation based on a basket of goods, and I say they look at that, okay, to see what's going on with the economy. But this time around was a little different because in the past they'd always said we're data dependent. We look at the data to drive our decisions, and the data right now suggests that a rate cut, might be needed.
Okay, so what kind of things should we be looking at for mortgages to go down? Because some people think that the Fed's going to lower rates, and they think automatically that their mortgage rates are going down, their car rates are going down, the credit card rates are going down. So what is kind of the connection between the two? Well,
okay, that's a great question. It's a real people think that if the Fed drops the rate, that mortgage rates are going to go down because they think the Fed influences the mortgage rates. And it's just simply not true. That rate, the federal funds rate, has a direct impact on car loans, auto loans, student loans, credit cards. Some loans like mortgage loans like a home equity line of credit, like a second mortgage, it could have an influence on. But it doesn't directly impact mortgage loans, but it's an indicator. So if the Fed is dropping their rate, they're less concerned with inflation, and that's the same data that people who buy mortgage-backed securities that dictate the rates of mortgages, that's the same data they're going to look at, and they're going to look at the same data and say, well, the Fed's dropping their rates because of these things, and there might be more of a rush to buy mortgage-backed securities, which would over time lower the rates.
Gotcha.
Okay, so you're seeing the data is a it's a variable that is looked at, and it's decided that, look, if these rates are low over here, it stands to reason that mortgage rates are going to be low as well.
Okay, gotcha. So with mortgage rates kind of around 6.8 for a 30-year loan, according to Freddie Mac, what are some things that home buyers, first-time home buyers that maybe don't know anything about it, or people looking to refinance, what kind of things should they be looking for?
So right now, I mean, if you need to buy a home, you need to buy a home. Mm-hmm. If you need a place to live, you need a place to live, right? And a lot of people say, what do they say? Marry the house.
Date the rate, marry the house.
Marry the house, date the rate. And I get that, but you don't want to get yourself into a home where you have to refinance later. You're depending that rates are going to go down. Crossing your fingers because you can't afford it. That's not good, financial decision to make. But if you need to buy a house and you'd rather not rent, a 6.7, it doesn't even, whatever the rates are at the time, you're going to factor in, can I afford this payment right now?
Yeah.
And if the rates do improve, you can look at refinancing. But right now, we could have rates could go down before the Fed meets again. The federal funds rate doesn't dictate mortgage rates. They're going to look, the Fed might wait till the next meeting to drop the rates. Maybe they don't drop to the next meeting. That doesn't mean mortgage rates are going to go up or down. But it stands to reason if the Fed's rates going down, the same indicators would be looked at in the mortgage markets, those rates would come down as well.
Gotcha. Is there typically like a rule of thumb of, say someone did just buy recently and they're like, oh, I can't wait to refinance. Is there usually a good time to do that? Is there, a rule of thumb for that?
Well, I mean, depending on the loan you have, there's certain rules that you can't refinance certain loans within a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. But, you want to make sure you're saving enough where the cost to do the refinance is not taken away from the benefit that you get from doing it. So, a lot of people like to say, oh, it's, 1%, if you can save 1%, that's good. That's a decent rule of thumb. That's what I just did there. But the reality is there's more math involved. So you want to look at the cost of getting the loan and the benefit you get from doing it on a refinance,
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah, so it definitely helps to talk with an expert on that front.
Yeah, so that's a great opportunity. Like if you think that there's a opportunity that you might be able to benefit from refinance, talk to a mortgage loan originator. We got some information below that they can reach out to talk to a mortgage loan originator for that.
Okay, cool. And so if we go back to the Fed, we see a lot in the news about political pressure, especially from public comments from our leaders.
Right.
How does that affect confidence in the Fed's decision?
Look, people want cheaper money. I'm selfish enough to say, oh, I wish the Fed dropped the rate today. But the reality is, is it a bad decision not to drop the rate? A lot of people will argue on both sides of that. The reality is that they didn't drop the rate, okay? So my opinion is irrelevant because I have no control over the Fed. But there's political pushes for lowering of rates. There's, because people want cheaper money. Cheaper money drives the economy. Our country is so dependent on cheap money. 6 point whatever percent the Fed, the Freddie Mac you said was estimating that the average rate's around 6.8%. That's not really uncheap money. If you look at it over time on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So, selfishly, I want the Fed to drop the rate. It will have an impact on cheap money, but I just don't. The Fed's job is to keep that target rate of inflation of 2%. And while they're really darn close to it, and maybe they should have dropped the rate, they're being cautious right now.
Yeah. Where do you think their concern comes from in terms of dropping the rates? Are they worried about home prices jumping up? Like what? Why are they keeping them at bay?
They're worried about inflation. Now, right now, they mentioned the tariffs, right? The tariffs are what's preventing them, and what they're claiming, they're preventing them from lowering the rates because the effects of the tariffs still aren't known. Now, remember, our government announced tariffs in April. We're now into August. So to say that the tariffs effect aren't fully known yet, I don't know if I agree or disagree with that. It's irrelevant again. But the tariffs, the impact they're saying would eventually, if someone's paying more, is it going to go to the borrower, or I should say the end user or the consumer? And if it goes to the consumer, that's inflation.
Yeah.
So if the prices rise, that's inflation. So they're fearful, the Fed is fearful of inflation. Now, I will say that there were two dissenters in the vote. They vote, the Federal Reserve votes on the rate. There's two dissenters that thought that the rates should have been lowered. Maybe next month they will get lowered. Maybe if the tariffs come to an end, you'll see lower rates from the Fed. That being said, that doesn't necessarily immediately translate into lower mortgage rates.
And that next meeting is in September?
September.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So if you were looking to buy a home, or you're kind of on the fence about locking an interest rate, what would you do?
This is a great question, because what would I do if I was looking to buy a home? Now, I remember I can lock into a home price today. Mm-hmm. Like if I went and bought a home today, I get that home price today. And I get whatever today's rates are. Mm. And if rates improve over time, I still have that home price. I can refinance to get a lower rate, assuming if you think the rates are going down and you're waiting for that, well, then you might pay more for that house. And then this has been said by a lot of people, but I think it's such a simple concept that a lot of people miss. Mm-hmm. If you're waiting on the sidelines right now to buy a house, it stands to reason that there's other people with your same mindset.
Correct.
And we've talked to a lot of people. I'm going to wait till the rates go down. I'm going to wait till the rates go down. And if enough people are going to wait till the rates go down, that's by definition pent up demand. Mm-hmm. Right? So we have this demand that's sitting on the sidelines waiting for the rates to go down. So it stands to reason when the rates go down, people will rush in. And if they rush in to buy a house, and what's going to happen to prices?
They're going to jump up.
They're going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
So while you might pay less in your interest rate, you're going to pay more for your house potentially, mm-hmm. right? This is all theoretical, but this is what simple supply and demand tells us. So if I needed to buy a house right now, which I don't because whatever, but if I did, I would buy the house now, get the best rate I could by calling Morgan Financial, because they're going to help you get the best rate that for your specific situation. That's a shameless plug. I can't help it.
Got to.
But the reality is that I would buy the house now, and then if rates do go down, well, not only did I get the best price on the house, because there's a little more wiggle room right now. Sellers are more willing to negotiate now, and because the market isn't as strong as maybe it will be when the rates drop. You might be able to get better terms. You might be able to get closing costs paid. Who knows? But that might go away if we have a rush in situation down the road. And so if that does happen, then later if the rates do go down, we can look at refinancing.
Yep.
So to me, that makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. If I needed to buy a house right now, I don't. And now that's the thing is if you don't need to buy, then maybe people wait, right? But if they wait, they could end up paying a lot more.
Good. That's really good advice. And I'm hearing that a lot as well on our end. So that's it. That's all the questions I had. And I appreciate, you talking about this. I think there's a lot of people that have a lot of misconceptions or just may not know all the ins and outs. So hopefully we can help shed some light on that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for watching us today. I hope you got some value out of this. If you did, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, share, do all those things, and we'll see you next time.